Concerns about the Obama administration's plans to defeat ISIS as the terror network releases another beheading video over the weekend. The White House and our Secretary of State are maintaining the U.S. won't put boots on the ground.
I can say definitively that the president has ruled out sending American boots on the ground to be engaged in a combat role in Iraq and in Syria.
Well, we're not looking to put troops on the ground. There are some who have offered to do so, but we are not looking for that at this moment anyway.
A former vice chair of the Joint Chiefs warns airstrikes won't be enough, while a former CIA chief predicts that reality will result in U.S. Special Forces on the ground by year's end.
The only way we can think about destroying ISIS in this particular strategy is that the forces on the ground will have to do the destroying.
I actually think we're going to end up with small American Special Operations Forces active in this broad theater, both Iraq and Syria. I do think we get to about 5,000 by the end of the year.
So what if that's what it takes to get it done? Does anybody have an objection with that at this table?
I do not.
You do not.
No, and I also think that I have some sympathy, or I think empathy is a better word, for what the administration is having to do. They're juggling a lot of different complex situations, partly of their own making. But now that they're in it, it's difficult. When you are offered help by some of the Arab countries, you don't necessarily want to advertise that, or those countries have said it will hurt the effort if you do say that we're there. On terms of boots on the ground, I think that I think that the administration around 5,000 Special Forces troops. That is not an invasion of a country. That's not 150,000 troops on the ground with all of the support teams that have to come with that. I think 5,000 Special Force, if that's what it comes down to, that's not what the administration's saying. That's the former CIA chief is saying. I just think that the administration still, even after this weekend, still seems very wobbly in its descriptions. It's just not clear what they're doing. I understand that they're having to walk some really strange lines, but even today you had the State Department spokesperson absolutely contradicting the Secretary of State on whether or not the United States had engaged Iran. So I think that that's what's giving people some pause, but overall I think they could probably get support for that type of mission as they described.
All right. Okay, go ahead.
I think they're already boots on the ground, and that's the last time I ever say that. Start saying ground troops, because boots on the ground is incredibly irritating. I don't think our country is war weary. I think our country is Obama weary. We know that our troops can eat ISIS for lunch. We're just worried whether President Obama is going to give them the knives and the forks. And I think that's where we're really worried. I don't think it's a problem that those guys are going to go in because they signed up for it. They know how to do it.
They train for it.
They train for it. It's just whether the commander-in-chief has the stomach and the willpower to continue, because we know how he felt about Afghanistan after that was his war. We've got to talk about the New York Times article that was over this weekend where Obama had offered his advice that he would have given to ISIL, which was please don't behead them. Instead, pin notes on the hostages' chests with a stern warning. I don't know if you saw that article over the weekend.
Yes.
So this is a president who thinks ISIL is responsive to warm, cool advice. I got news for the president. They don't read Dear Abby. They behead Dear Abby. And this betrays a fundamental cluelessness about the nature of evil. They don't listen to advice. They would never do that. They're going to cut off your head.
Right. What's next? A kind, paperless post to ISIS saying, please engage in more, humanitarian and sweet terroristic tactics, Bowling?
Go ahead. You can go first if you like, Bob. I was just going to say that I think we're dealing here with a group that I've said from the beginning, when they were not, when there was nobody there to take them on, they did pretty well. Now there are people taking them on. They're not doing very well. They've picked up not 1 inch of ground since we began to engage them. I think Greg's right. There will be soldiers, special forces. I think they're probably there right now.
Yeah.
And they're doing what they need to do. And you've also got an ISIS, not an army that's had a long history of command and control. So you don't have a well-disciplined group of people. They've got a lot of weapons. They're mean. They're nasty. They're horrible. But the question is, are they a trained, effective combat force? And that I have doubts when they're faced with a combat force. All
right, so I'm going to use your words, and I'm going to ask Eric Bowling, because you said that they have not advanced. So basically we're holding them in their tracks. That sounds like a theory and actual practice of containment, but that is very different from defeating ISIS.
Yeah, okay, true. But what's the rush? We've been there 13 years, right? Let's try this air campaign. Look, they beheaded one British aid worker. They said they're going to ISIS. They said they're going to. The next one's going to be another British aid worker. And Cameron says, well, we're not ready to not even put boots on the ground personnel. We're not even ready to get involved in the airstrike. So here's the thing: we have plenty of time. These are cockroaches, and we want to kill them all. They're just absolute pieces of garbage, and we will get them. So why don't we try the air campaign first? Why don't we see
if we can? Hold on. What about doubling it up?
Just let me just finish. We can continue to help Peshmerga, the Kurds. Let them work on it. We can continue to fund and help the Iraqi boots on the ground, the Iraqi troops already. We can do all those things. Now there are 2 or 3 Arab nations who said they'd be willing to put troops in as well. We're getting what they call a coalition of the willing. We may or may not show up or not, but let's try the airstrikes first. By the way, this 160 airstrikes over the past 35 or 38 days is a joke. We did 140 sorties the first day of Desert Storm and the first day of both of the Iraq wars.
A whole lot different.
Well, we're not saying something
really,
different.
It's really not, Bob. I mean, we know where they are. We have this outlined area. How many maps have you seen with the Syrian border is gone, so northern Iraq and southern Syria, that's where they are. Go ahead and bomb them.
You don't think if we had the targets to bomb, we would bomb them? I think when you start talking about going into a general war, you're crossing into a border, and yes, you're going to bomb in front of you, and yes, you're going to send 150, 200, 300, 400 airstrikes, but in this case, you've got to pick out specific places to bomb, and it's not just something that you do, says carpet bomb an entire area. You've got a lot of civilians.
And there's also, I think that, Bob, you touch on something that is a major problem for us and for our allies, is that's the lack of intel. That apparently I understand the United States tried the rescue mission for the hostages. That was not successful, and it seemed that then, by all accounts, the trail's gone cold. So we don't have intel that is informing us, and we also know that the terrorists, the ISIS, is listening to anything that our leaders say, because in the most recent beheading over the weekend, the narration references something that David Cameron, the leader of the UK, said last week. So we know that they are listening and they're paying attention. The third thing, though, is that in order to make sure that these airstrikes are successful, you have to have somebody on the ground, whether it's Iraqis or Kurds, that are telling the people that are bombing where to hit, or else we could look at some very serious friendly fire situations that we would not want to be responsible for.
Right, but that's the challenge, though, right now, is the challenge used to be to infiltrate and disrupt these groups. But now you're faced with a media who thinks that somehow it's wrong to spy. And so now you're challenged by an enemy and somebody who doesn't like your methods.
And to interrogate.
Yeah, and to interrogate, which is wrong. And also, to go back to England, the reason why, and this is important for us, the reason why England isn't sending anybody is because it's hard to send people when you're broke. Yep. And it's a consequence of a country buried in domestic debt. Basically, these countries, and we're getting there, we're turning into fat guys who can't fight. Or we can't swing because we're so mired in our own domestic programs and debt that we can't afford to win.
And we have forces that are ready, willing, and able to serve. I'm going to show the camera inside.
I'm sorry. I jumped ahead.
No, it's okay. Let's just take a listen to this. I want to get it in, get everybody's reaction. So this is the British Prime Minister, David Cameron, and these are his thoughts on ISIS.
We will hunt down those responsible and bring them to justice, no matter how long it takes. They are not Muslims. They are monsters. We have to confront this menace. Step by step, we must drive back, dismantle and ultimately destroy ISIL and what it stands for. The United States is taking direct military action. We support that. This is not about British combat troops on the ground. It is about working with others to extinguish this terrorist threat.
Wow. All right, so the mighty UK is relying on the United States.
Because they're broke.
Here, Bob?
Yeah, well, it's let's give the UK some credit here. They've been with us every step of the way in every war we've been in. And if fat or not, they're facing an election, and the election is not going to be.
But they're the craziest radicals are from England. The guy who's doing the beheading.
I know, I understand that, but for the British public, the idea of them seeing Britain spend that much more money, as you're pointing out, when they can't get money for their schools, then that's something that's going to become an election.
They can get money for their schools. They've got so much money for their domestic programs, and Britain has completely starved its military in order to pay for a welfare state that they can't afford.
I'm scratching my head. we're as much of a welfare state as Britain is right now.
Not quite yet.
Well, why not? We're
about 8 years away.
We're $14 trillion in debt. We're going to be $20 trillion in debt. We have unfunded liabilities out the wazoo that even Britain doesn't even have. I would make the case that we're at least as broke as Great Britain, and give Obamacare a couple more years, and we might be even sooner.
Do you know what President Obama did in the New York Times article that you referenced earlier? The one thing that he was able to do this weekend is to unite all of us against France. One of the things that's very difficult for President Obama and Prime Minister Cameron is that the United States and UK policy is to not pay not pay ransoms for hostages. And apparently what Obama said in these meetings with the journalists and other foreign policy experts was that France says that they don't pay the ransoms, but we know that they are. And so that makes it even more difficult for Obama and Cameron to hold the line, and difficult for the families.
Right.
And even more important to figure out, I mean, that's why they should have announced this coalition before they announced they were going to form a coalition. Now we look like we can't even put together a coalition.
Well, it's all bad. I mean, really, when you look at it, because no, that is bad, because it looks like we can't put together a team. Then we're like, all right, go team, and everybody's like, oh,
but one of our team members, the French, are basically undercutting us.
Well, they are, because it's cheaper for them to pay for the hostages and get all in, to put all their chips on the table.
The French have been wusses with us in virtually every war we've had. You remember the same French refused to allow Ronald Reagan to overfly in order to bomb in Libya? The French have got a real serious problem. They've got too many Muslims in Paris, and they know it, and they're afraid to death of having civil unrest. That's the reason they won't do it.
Right now in France, the latest poll has ISIL more popular than the French politicians. By the way, Cameron says that they are not Muslims, they're monsters. Why can't they be both?
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know they're Muslim.
Yeah.
Look,
I mean, this is jihad against anyone who doesn't believe in Sharia law. We know they're Muslim, and we know they're monsters. We've seen it.
Well, and it would be nice if we can get even more support from the UK, but this is what happens when you cut your military funding, so people should think about that.
What happens after the other Brit aid worker gets beheaded? Then do they step up and say, hey, we support you, United States, or they say, not only do we support you, we're in this with you? That would help.
I mean, you know what? If you just keep looking for someone else to do the job, get out and, like, sweep it out yourself.
I think their domestic political situation in Britain is not unlike France, though, in terms of the infiltration and the immigration that they left unchecked for a long time. So now they have terrorist cells all throughout the country, and their intel community is very, very good. Their cooperation with their law enforcement is good. But I think that it makes it harder for him. I understand why, from a political standpoint, he says they're not Muslims, they're monsters, because one, they're trying to build a coalition of Arab states to help them fight ISIS, and then also they have a political situation with all those local communities that have very heavy Muslim populations that they have to continue to serve and basically to pacify.
All right,
Which is amazing, the fact that there will be some Muslim countries involved in this, because I think politically that is one of the most dangerous thing you could possibly do.
But that's why they don't say. That's why we can't say who they are.
They allegedly have two that are willing to actually participate in air attacks.
The Saudis. Right?
Another big problem for us.
Turkey
refusing to cooperate in a way that they should would be meaningful and significant. And just to give the UK credit, their SAS forces have been on the ground with our special operations forces from the beginning. So what they do have, they are giving. All right, next on the 5.